books teach history, statues and buildings glorify it. We have to remember the things that have happened in the past of our country and try to build forward for a better future.
So I'd like to start with a little bit about your journey into politics then, which is quite an interesting one. You left school at 17, you became an MP while still finishing an undergraduate degree, and are now a very young MP. What was that journey like?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I left school when I was 17 because I didn't feel that sixth form was right for me, and I felt that I needed to work my path out on my own. So I went straight to work in my town centre in Hertford. I was working in a local coffee shop. From there, I went and worked in London for a little while. I've been in marketing, I've been in recruitment, I've worked in pubs. You know, the reason I really ended up in politics, I'm very passionate about youth services, young people, mental health and well-being. Because I wouldn't have worked out the path that was right for me if it hadn't been for the support of some of our youth workers. I went to a youth club in Hertford when I was sort of 17. I wouldn't have found the path that was right for me. I wouldn't have found what I was passionate about without the support of those youth workers.
You also did some really interesting campaigning. You campaigned to get a theatre that was named after Cecil Rhodes, who was a Prime Minister in colonial South Africa, renamed to something different during the Black Lives Matter protests. Why was that something that was very important to you?
Well, I joined with a group of campaigners around that issue. I think, you know, during the Black Lives Matter movement, we had a chance to reflect as a country and as a community, and local campaigners felt strongly that art centre should be renamed. It's now called the South Mill Art Centre, and I am, you know, proud of being involved in that campaign because I think it really showed the community coming together, people coming together to make a positive change. It allowed us to reflect on our history, but also to be forward-looking for the future of the art centre in our community, and I think that was the right thing to do.
The classic, I suppose, criticism that's lobbied against, or was lobbied against, you know, tearing down statues or renaming places, was that it's erasing history in some way. What's your response to people that say that?
Well, look, books teach history, statues and buildings glorify it, and I think it's right that we reflect on our history. It's also important we don't forget that history, and you know, you make a point about erasing history. We have to reflect on that history. We have to remember you know, the things that have happened in the past of our country, but it's right that people talk about that, reflect on it, and try to build forward for a better future.
Who is your political hero?
I don't think I have political heroes.
You can name a few. You can give me a handful.
Well, what I would say is if I told you about one person who really drove me to get involved in politics. It's not a politician, it's not a celebrity, it's my old history teacher, Mr. Patterson, because it was from studying history that I started to think a bit more about politics, particularly as I, you know, really found those issues that I was passionate about. And I think Mr. Patterson instilled in all of us this real desire to question and also to make change. And he taught us about how things can be changed and can be changed for the better. And you know, he really inspired me as a young person. I think, you know,
it's a very cute story. It's a very media-friendly story. Well, and the old cute history teacher.
And I think that's really important. That is really important. You know, that young people have teachers like that in their schools. Teachers in specialist subjects, making sure that they are finding what they're passionate about, able to achieve what they want to achieve. You know, we need teachers like that in every classroom.
And now, in terms of young people's relation to the Labour Party, obviously you're a very young MP. We have seen a bit of a drop-off, though, of young people voting for the Labour Party. The most recent statistics I saw, I think it was 56% of 18 to 24-year-olds voted for Corbyn in 2019, but this year only about 41% voted for Starmer. Do you think the Labour has a problem with young people?
No, not at all. And I mean, when you look at some of the things that we had on offer in our manifesto, you know, reform of the skills offer, mental health support for young people in schools, you know, a network of youth hubs with, you know, trained youth workers, mental health support readily available for young people, something I'm very passionate about. I think you can see a clear offer for young people. What I do think is that there's a real apathy around politics, and that's because of the damage of the last 14 years. That's because people stopped trusting politicians. That's why Keir's been really clear that we need to return to a politics of service and a government of service, and I'm proud to be part of that work.
In terms of the voice of young people, I noticed in the election a lot of that younger demographic seemed really focused on Palestine. It was a very important issue for them. Do you think Labour are handling that situation well, and do you think Starmer could be doing anything more?
Well, look, I completely support the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary in their work on what is a really sensitive, emotive issue. For people in our community in Hertford and Stortford and across the country, it's right that we've called for an immediate ceasefire, the cessation of hostilities. It's right that we've called for the release of hostages and for the unimpeded access of aid into Gaza. And I, support the Foreign Secretary and the government in what they've laid out in terms of the limited suspension of arms sales to Israel, because it's important that we are focused on our legal obligations internationally. I appreciate why it's a very challenging issue, and I'm having regular conversations with residents in my community about it. I think what's really important is that we're facing up to it as a challenge. It is a major international challenge. It's something that residents in our communities across the country will feel strongly about. That's about the hard graft of government. It's not about catching headlines, it's about putting in the hard graft to get the position and the response right.
One last question then. You mentioned earlier there are about 10 of you, young sort of under 30s in the Labour Party. My question is, do you have a group chat? And if so, do you let any Lib Dems in?
Well, I think there's 10 of us under 30 overall in Parliament. I can't actually remember how many of us there are exactly in the Labour Party.
There's no group chat?
No, there is. There is a group chat.
Is?
Some of us young Labour MPs,
Okay.
some of us just elected and some of us previously elected.
Just like it's exclusive Labour though?
Well, we are young Labour MPs. So.
Oh, you can squeeze a couple
But I'm
of
always
Lib Dems
more than
in.
happy to have a chat with young colleagues across the House.